we get started, if you could take a moment to silence your cell phones, I would greatly appreciate that. Olive Theodore is a maritime preservationist, environmental innovator, and founder of Walrus Boat Recycling, a creative closed-loop solution turning derelict vessels into usable materials, art, and community assets. Additionally, she is leading a national maritime heritage and coastal resilience initiative, a multi-state effort to protect working waterfronts, restore historic vessels, and reduce marine debris through circular economy systems. Her work weaves heritage, ecology, and imagination to strengthen communities from coast to coast. Please welcome Olive Theodore.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here, and thank you for such a warm welcome. All right. I'm Olive Theodore, Walrus Boat Recycling. Point this right here. So our mission, Walrus is a 501c3 nonprofit organization centered around saving and upcycling boats. It is structured in a way that addresses homelessness, supports marine restoration, honors history, strengthens community, and pays homage to the indigenous peoples of our local lands and sacred waters. Most of these are just pictures that we'll move through, and I think they speak for themselves. I imagine everyone in this room has seen a vessel that looks like this, probably many on the Columbia River, and
Not Olive's fault, my fault. I have to get it on the right screen for the recording, so stand by, everyone. I apologize.
I'm happy not to be the only one struggling with tech.
Good? Yes. Okay, we're back. Carry on.
All right. So as I was saying, I think we've all seen boats that look like this on the Columbia, in Seattle where I live. Even on the drive down here, we saw one pulling into Astoria on the side of the road. Our board president, E2, who's in the front row here, who I may call up for some support at some point. We don't know yet. And I just got back from France studying derelict vessels there with a different group of artists and scientists, and these boats are abundant in every waterway. So this is not something that's just unique to Oregon or to Washington. It is a global issue. But in the States, approximately 146 million tons of waste are sent to US landfills annually. And when we look at those boats, like the one in the last picture, the reality is that that is where those boats are going. The majority of these vessels, we don't have a process, which is why I created this organization. We don't have a process to find futures for all of these thousands and thousands of boats that each state in our country have derelict. We take an excavator to them and then bury them in our earth as if that were somehow better than them deteriorating in our waterways. All things are connected. And that was not an acceptable answer to me when I came to realize that that's what was happening. And I'm going to tell you, I suppose, what I did about it. Speaking of the trip to France, the derelict vessels, and the spiky bits that you see are fiberglass. And there are all kinds of derelict vessels because there are all kinds of vessels. But fiberglass specifically, when we were in France, we were studying the impact of fiberglass in derelict vessels on our oceans and waterways. And these tiny shards act as asbestos does and are killing all kinds of sea life, like tiny little swords traveling through our waters. So I wanted to give you that close-up look at the harm of not having a specific pathway for what these materials look like as we bring them into new lives, hopefully with purpose. I'm just doing a moment of silence here on this one. Again, I think many of them do speak for themselves. So this is the solution that I created. And this is a map I made 4 years ago when I first created this organization. And I'm proud that everything on here is still what I'm doing. I have not changed this map, and I'm not going to stay here too long, but there's a lot to how this all unfolds. And I created a for-profit business that works parallel, mainly so that there's the option to scale things and operate legally in all fashions, and also for Paper Boat, which is the name of the for-profit, to feed its profits back into the nonprofit organization. So they work together, and there's different leases that one or the other can hold, or different business ownership opportunities that work to keep this whole thing feeding itself and functioning. So really at the beginning, we have the boats that arrive. I get a call with a different boat about every other day, which has been way more than I can handle, but I'm doing my best to create a system that supports there being something in place that is sustainable, that is reasonable, but that need is definitely there. So then the first decision that really gets made is whether a boat should be saved or repurposed. And in saving them, there's a lot of different ways that can look, but the decision to save a boat is to say it should stay in the water, which is to say that there are not, places leaching fiberglass, as that last image I showed, or the very last boat that is, well underwater. Those are not boats that we would save, but boats that are having strong historic value and in structural integrity. We want to try to keep as many of those alive, especially these historic ones, as we can. And I will get into some more personal attachments of the boats I am stewarding in a moment here. But then there's the repurposing. And so that is to look at some of these vessels and realize that while they may not be meant to continue floating, some of these are made of teak, which is not even legal to acquire any longer new, yet putting it in a dumpster is certainly not a way to respect this gift of nature that we're trying to protect. So looking first at the potential for housing, that's a big focus for me. There's some things up here I'll probably reference a few times. These are all made from upcycled materials. There's a tent that we made out of sails, and we're working on a large scale version of that. Right now, this was our prototype, and a jacket that we made out of sailcloth. We're working on some hats and some fun things. And there is a desk up here as well. This is made out of 4 different boats, and has a seat made out of upcycled sailcloth as well. And so just a quick example that even the smaller parts of these vessels have the potential for more life moving forward. One of the goals that I want to point out now that we'll come back into later is all the way up in this corner here, not profit point, back a little left. There's the goal of having a yard, a shipyard for supporting the tools, moorage, and trades. And I promise we'll circle back to that in a moment here. So I started this project and my background was not in boats, which is perhaps why I was able to realize the need or the issue, or it I think was really normal to a lot of people that this was just happening, or people hadn't stopped to even think about what's going on with the boats. I came into this from a community making perspective. I ran a community arts gallery and healing center. Of my work was based on how to optimize what little we had. I got off to a rough start in this world and worked really hard to get to that point of working with these tiny little pieces to make something beautiful and share with those around me. And I got really sick while I was running this art space and kind of had to pull back from everything I'd worked really hard to create. And I did not know how to get back the wind in my sails. At this time, I'd never been sailing. That for me was a long help. And this boat on your right here with the rainbow sail, Genesis, aptly named, was a boat I found on Craigslist for free. And I wrote to them vigorously, like somehow this boat would save me, which it did. And it was a year before I ended up with the boat, which is a whole other story for a different time, but it was really quite a magical process of us coming together. And with my love of the water and myself draped in seaweed, perhaps as a demonstrator, I was really excited to be able to have this world of sovereignty and wildlife and access and peace and freedom, all those things that I felt like sailing would bring, and this attunement to nature and the elements. And my pursuit of Genesis really brought me that sense back to myself, especially having struggled with housing as a younger person. And I realized immediately that these boats could be that solution for other people as well, specifically as it pertains to housing, which is why that's one of our focuses with this organization. So I took on this boat and sailed it with no engine from Anacortes to Port Townsend and worked in the shipyard there. I went to this medicine woman every night, and every day I worked in the shipyard trying to learn how to fix a boat. And that in and of itself, the health issues that I had were neurological. And one of the best things you can do for a neurological challenge is learn a new language. And I've been trying to learn French since 3rd grade. It's not working out for me. I did get a French tutor at the time to try to help, but the new language that I ended up learning was really the language of Maritime. And the knots and the terms, and I'm still have plenty to learn. This all happened 4 years ago. So I'm going to trip over so many things, I think. Now this is my home. This is a 123-year-old tugboat, which is 10 years older than the Titanic. And that's where I said I was going to circle back and tell you about my own efforts towards historic preservation. So I have lived on this boat for 3 years now. My partner and I live on it together. It has an Atlas engine. It's the last Atlas that was ever installed. There is an Atlas engine in the doorway as you enter this museum, so you can check that out on your way and know that that is the engine that makes my home move. And Irene, I guess, has rendered me speechless. It's an incredible gift to live on this home, and this boat is a really great example of why putting a boat in a dumpster, not that that really needs much of an argument, but physically, I guess I have a pointer. So this whole upper house, we have a bedroom up here, a bathroom that we're building right now, and then the wheelhouse. We have a very big galley, a full-size living room, another full-size bathroom. We're putting a clawfoot tub in right now, and a guest room, all just upstairs. We have a laundry room downstairs and all kinds of other great things going on that we have worked to put in here. But the point I'm trying to make with upstairs is that that's a full home that has plumbing and electrical, and I'm getting emotional, but that's because there are so many people struggling with housing. And everyone deserves to feel safe. So the simplest thing to do here is to cut the house off of this boat and take it to land if it's not fit to be in the water. And it's an ADU ready to go. Like I said, it has plumbing, it has electrical, it has everything someone needs. It has a full kitchen and 2 bathrooms. And the hull, this boat specifically being made of wood, there is an enzyme and a mushroom that can work together to eradicate any of the toxins from the wood, and the wood can then be sunk to support restoring the ocean floor and or doing re-reefing work. So again, all of these things are outlined in that project map, which is really extensive, but this is a really extensive problem, and I've been slowly working my way through everything I dreamt up. That's that imagination part. Thing I dreamt up to solve this problem. And now I'm going to plug us in locally here in Astoria. So this photograph, the boat on the right, is Irene, who you just saw. That's my tugboat. And next to Irene is Elmore. Elmore was built on the grounds of this museum. And this photo was taken in 1912 of them working together. Elmore is about to be scrapped in Port Townsend. And while I'm working my way with government agencies towards changing the way we do all of this, that's not something that happens overnight. So the more people that know that there's some other way to go about this, the more people that care that we don't take apart these stories. And I should say that the museum here has been very supportive around how to make the dismantling of this vessel that is not the museum's choice, how to make that mean something. We're all working on how to make it mean something. And again, that's a decision we make right away, right? Does this belong in the water, or should it be turned into something else? And so long as things have the opportunity to keep living on, the craftsmanship, materials, so long as they have the opportunity to keep living on, that is our focus. This is a, did I do that? Oh, now it's working again. Oh, okay. This is a wall at the new medical center here in Astoria that Walrus just installed. And so you can all go check it out in real time. There is a switchboard. These are all parts from very different boats. There is a switchboard that is fully operating. The gauges turn on, the keys turn, everything works, and it makes the wall work. The wheels turn, and these stained glass lights that we our incredibly talented artists that are part of our team put together, they light up as well. But this is just a really practical example of the teaching opportunities that are still available with these materials. And the view actually up there is amazing. So you can just go out and press buttons and check out the lovely Columbia River from your local medical center. Okay, so hope, I think, is really important. And there is a saying in permaculture, the problem is the solution. And so that is how I really look at all of this. Everything that's a problem here, I look at where can that problem solve a different answer somewhere else. And so I think I made that point really clearly with housing. Another place that I hope is obvious up here with these materials is in supporting our artists. The idea of the starving artist is a well-known concept, and similarly to my feelings that everyone should be housed, I think everyone should be fed. And it's a really sweet way to feed someone's creative process by taking these materials that would have otherwise been trash, toxic trash at that, and pulling pieces to create something new. Again, this desk up here, which is really beautiful and usually lives inside my art studio, that was made by a friend. I suppose I should say, like, shout out to Falfa Workshop. The top is mahogany and taken from the transom of a boat that sank I don't know how many times. But now it's a desk and it doesn't have to worry about that. So that is, yeah, okay, hope. I'm going to say more because I think this project is really built on that. The hope that that everyone can see what I can see in this, that everyone can see solution through the challenge. And I think that speaks more than just this issue, but a lot of things that we're facing as people in the world right now. And the power of leaning in together, of passing those materials around. Oh, here's all the things I don't need. Do you need them? Because there's a lot that's going unused. And I hope that you'll all join me in caring about this issue and moving this work forward in whatever little pieces or big pieces of inspiration you have or imagination you have inside of you. This is a 3D construction, a 3D constructed image. I don't actually know how to talk about that. I am not very tech savvy. Luckily, everything I'm doing is physical. So this is a 3D scan. I think that's how they say it. A derelict vessel in Bellingham. So this is like a real image. And this is something that I've been talking about with the museum when we're looking at how to archive, because there's this whole other conversation around how do we save the history of these vessels. And there's vessels like Irene that I live on, where her story we are personally stewarding. And there's Elmore, who we're working on telling that story, and that there's a lot of depth that I could do a whole presentation on Elmore. And one of the ways that I've been talking with Columbia River Maritime Museum about bringing Walrus's work deeper in is saving the designs of these vessels, where we can't always keep the historic vessel, even if we go and we make beautiful desks out of everything. We still want to be able to keep that history alive. So that's another element of what this project is doing. And we're still working on developing that technology, and there's other folks to partner with around that. But that's another element of keeping the historic aspect alive. And we're back at one of these images because I think the first time I showed it, it maybe didn't carry any hope. And now perhaps you look at this the way I do and see the earth eager to claim those materials. And back to this idea of preparing these vessels, it's what if we intentionally sunk the ships? What if they were ready to be sunk? What if the holes were cleaned before they were sunk? And we're actually seeing in Europe, there's a company that just started doing that with buses, based on watching how eagerly the oceans took back ships. So they started stripping down the buses, cleaning up the buses that are made of metal, and sinking them on purpose, again, to regenerate the ocean floor. So I'm hoping that this picture can maybe carry a little bit of a different story to you now than it did the first time we saw it. And I'm hoping to carry this message to all of the states that are in blue. The right side is a letter of support that I have from the DNR to continue doing this work. And I am hoping with the government in all of these highlighted states, including the Great Lakes. I grew up in Chicago, and so I've had a surprising number of people say, what about our boats here? So it's definitely, again, anywhere there's water, this is really an issue. And I have been to DC a number of times, and I'm working on planning a trip for this year to talk with representatives, and their environmental teams have been really excited. Everyone wants to have a solution. And I'm hoping that what I've designed is thorough enough to really bring that full circle. And the DNR, there's not a DNR in every state. I think actually in Oregon, it's a little bit different. But the DNR in Washington have said themselves that they've been at this issue for 10 years and have not been able to make any dent to make it better. So the need for a system is really clear. And again, I'm hoping that having this for-profit, this nonprofit, this external infrastructure from the government offers everyone a little more agency in our maneuverability to create something new, to dream of something new, to dream of something bigger. And right now I've met with the senatorial offices of all of the dark blue states. The Great Lakes was a later addition, and at some point, I've been working with the national parks on this as well. At some point, they said, "Why don't we make it everyone's state? It'll really help. It'll really help unite everyone." And there is water in every state, but I really had to draw the line somewhere. So, apologies if any of your hometowns are in gray. Okay, this is gonna seem out of the blue, perhaps. It feels like that to me because I've been really deep into everything else I've been talking about. Part of Walrus, again, is coming up with all of the solutions for all of these things that are impacting our waterways. And I don't know if everyone in this room knows, but there are real walruses really sinking derelict boats. So you can look that up when you get home, but that is where the name came from. And so my creating of this project was really hearing nature asking for these answers and getting to work and trying to come up with something that would really fix it. So this beeswax bottom paint that E2, our board director, and myself have developed would be the very first eco-friendly bottom paint. And again, when you look at how many vessels are out there covered in poison in our waterways, that's a really strong impact that I haven't really heard anyone else talk about it, let alone having any kind of calculations on what that's really doing to our bodies or to our environments. And so I'm not really worried about that part. That just is what it is, frankly. I would much rather come up with something that just sets us into a better state altogether. So these are just full pictures. There's like more pictures of this than anything else. Full slide show, but this first one, that's a mussel trying to attach to a wooden boat, unsuccessfully. We have a worm trying to attach unsuccessfully to a wooden boat. The beeswax is on here, by the way. We got a worm and a fish in the scene. We got two fish. Now, this is a sort of thing that's really impressive to me because bottom paint, I don't want to touch it. And the fish definitely don't want to touch it. And it's pretty poisonous and pretty deadly. So when we got three fish here, all cruising up, kissing the bottom paint, that was pretty exciting for us. And it's on its first vessel in ocean water. It was tested in lake water first. And in the lake water, we tested it not on a vessel, but in jars. And the growth in a jar simply without beeswax present was exponential to, and I have so many extra pictures. I really tried to narrow it down for you guys. So if there's anything I talked about and you're like, I want to see it or prove it, I can. But the beeswax in the jars that did not have, oh my gosh, I gotta rewind. My brain's getting all scrambled up. The jars that had lake water and wood, pickled wood, I chose wood that had actually been preserved already because ideally these boats that are wooden boats are being pickled. And yes, this is a bottom paint designed specifically for wooden boats, but we have already started on one that is well on its way for fiberglass. There's an exponential difference simply with the presence of beeswax in the water of the deterioration. And when we pulled out a piece of wood that had been coated in the beeswax, it came out completely clean. The beeswax, cut it in half, came out completely clean. The beeswax had fully penetrated the wood. The wood was dry and happy inside. And as we just saw, the nature was happy too. So I go back to this idea of hope and symbiosis and the possibility that we can all exist well together. This is the vessel out of the water, but with the beeswax paint fully on it. And that work E2 and I did together, largely E2 physically. So I feel like shout out to E2. Those were some real labors of love. This is a vessel in Port Townsend.
Yeah, it's faster in the water too.
That was another thing that I learned when I was doing my first rendition of creating this material is that it actually creates more buoyancy as well. So that was a fun bonus of the beeswax bottom paint. Okay, now we're onto the shipyard. So back to that maritime initiative, my goal is to take a shipyard that's closed, which I imagine everyone knows, but in case they don't, all our shipyards are closing because the art of boat building, as many derelict vessels as we're seeing turn up, we're also seeing a loss of the trades, a loss of the skill, a loss of the art. So part of my initiative is to reopen these abandoned shipyards and not only keep the trades going, but partner it with this work to clean up our environment. And this is the shipyard we're currently working to reopen. This is when it was still running. It's now completely vacant, and this is what we're working on right now in Seattle, and it will be our pilot facility. And the difference of having a facility, there's two ways, one 300 ton and one 600 ton, and it is an underwater railway system, which is really freaking cool, and there's not very many of those left. So it's, again, like the layers of this project, it's hard to put into one presentation, but that commitment to keeping the history alive is really there through and through. And having a facility, there's the winches, is really going to help us, because part of what doesn't make this work is that there is no designated place. There's no place for people to turn in their vessels when they can't responsibly care for them anymore. There's no place for people to really get support in being responsible vessel owners, which takes me to my next slide. So the reality of this project is that it's not always perfect. This is the Inverness on the right side, which is the first large vessel that I took on. And I did not sink the boat, but the people I gave the boat to did sink it. And so we had to really draw back into what does programming look like and what are the needs here that are actually creating barriers for this people, because people have this dream. This is a shared dream. There's a fellow who just quit his job and Phoenix did a whole Instagram world of sailing to Hawaii with very little knowledge, and he did a great job, and I fully support that. A lot of people got really excited about it. He's got a whole world of fame now from people who got excited watching someone follow their dreams to be on the water, follow their dreams. And so it's not for lack of desire for folks. It's really for lack of resource. So part of having a shipyard is having a space where people can come and take classes, where they can haul their boat out and be guided and working on it, because Walrus gives people boats for free, or at least we did before. We have to do a much more thorough vetting process now in making sure that everything's set up for that. But part of having a shipyard in all the places where these boats get turned in is that we'll be able to actually be along with people to make sure that they can do everything that the boat asks of them. And I know very well that when you pick a boat, you give your life to that boat. And Irene has our life, and happily so. But there's a big responsibility with owning something like this. All that damage that we're up here talking about, or in here, because we've seen those derelict vessels and we're concerned, that's your responsibility as a vessel owner to make sure that doesn't happen. And it's our government's responsibility and our society's responsibility to make sure that there are supports in place. This was us bringing the highest of hopes. It feels like a bright picture, doesn't it? Who knew she would sink? Towing her all the way up to Canada. Oakham Insurance, another part of what we are currently developing, because one of the other barriers to responsible vessel ownership is insurance. If you have a wooden boat, it's next to impossible to get insurance. If you have a historic vessel, next to impossible to get insurance. Boat insurance in general and boat ownership in general is really being priced out for people. So we're looking at not only are the trades disappearing, but the financial capacity to keep up with the way that boat ownership is being framed and made, frankly, inaccessible. There's some other supports that have to come into place. So something else that Walrus is working on is creating an insurance program that people can be part of as a community to buy into, to make sure that they can haul their vessels out. It's just an import insurance so that they can get their work done on the hard, which is now a problem. If you don't have insurance, these are new laws that went into place, and I think there are benefits to the laws, and also, again, these added challenges. So if you don't have insurance, you can't get your boat out of the water, and if you can't get your boat out of the water, I'm not really sure how you're supposed to take good care of it or keep it afloat. Moment of silence. Okay. I think I really like rammed through there because this is the last slide. But I feel like probably there are lots of questions, and I'm a little early on that, and I could definitely just keep talking. But
Thank you, Olive. So I'm going to come around with a handheld microphone for any of you who might have questions. Just go ahead and raise your hand. I'll come to you, and then that way everyone can hear what you have to say.
Wow. I walked in a little late, and I'm sorry. You're remarkable. And how you keep all these things going, I have no idea. But I do support recycle. Recycle before recycling was even popular. I know glass is easy, cans are easy, plastic is not so easy, one of our hardest problems. But recycling a friggin' boat, I like that idea. And the housing part, I'm not sure how that all works, but if you can do it, yay. You must have a big team working with you, though.
well, I will answer both of those things. You're welcome to keep asking questions. I'll keep track of them. But if two questions I heard there are about the housing and about the team. So regarding the team, it is by and large just me that holds all of this. I have a lot of partners that I work with on specific things like specific insurance advisors, government relationships that I'm building out, but I'm really firm on honoring people's time, and I have not really found a way to make this lucrative yet. Right now, it's entirely a labor of love, and I do this in my free time. It's a pretty small team, but a really rowdy community, and everybody definitely shows up when I need something to keep this moving forward. And so I'm really grateful for that. Especially ET, who has definitely been a hand in making these things come to life. Housing. So the housing looks a lot of different ways. There's housing like I have with on the water. And then there's housing where, like I talked about, we can cut the top of a boat that's a full home off and take that and have it as an ADU. It's ready to go. It can go onto a concrete slab just like any other ADU would. So there's that version. Then there's looking at fiberglass. So we saw the tiny pictures of that. It's a really pretty dangerous material to work with, and it's also filling our waters. So the idea with that is that fiberglass can actually be used to reinforce cement. And there's a bunch of different ways to build with cement, but that can go into housing solutions specifically. So working on creating a process and system of chipping that material down, finding a way to safely contain it, and creating infrastructure with that where it's an internal material rather than an external material. And then also things like some of the lumber that can be saved can go back into this housing, into housing solutions. So I think that there's a lot of ways that we have already mapped out what that looks like. And we also have taken boats on land. So there's that whole other side. I don't know how I skipped over that. There's that whole other side of a boat is maybe not fit for water, but the whole boat could be fit for land. And some of that looks like building a foundation in the ground and using the earth as the waterway, so to speak. So the boat is sunk in the dirt to sea level, and the rest remains above land. And in our drawings of this, we've got little pictures of docks winding through through your garden. And there's actually an enzyme that will grow on cement. So some of what we're thinking is to actually build out using the technology and design of boats to upcycle that fiberglass in a boat design that's made for being underground as a home, which is more energy efficient. And then there can be an enzyme implemented into the cement itself, which will grow a garden over the top. And so that makes something where somebody who wanted to do an ADU anyways, or someone who has a plethora of land available, or even some of the land that we really want to make sure it stays beautiful, or we want to make sure it stays green, that there's this way to still generate and populate housing solutions while keeping our views or our scene. That's the same thing. I didn't have another thing. While keeping our views.
So you said that you get offered a boat like every other day. How many of those would you say you either take or offer direction on what should be done, or maybe not should be, but options for those owners?
So I try to talk to every single person who comes through. I, especially with this rate and being one individual, I just frankly don't have the capacity to handle every boat, which again tells me that this project is really necessary. But I try to give everybody some semblance of guidance, and I just started working with 2 new partners who do boat deconstruction. So I'm advising them on how we can best do that together, and or they're developing their own internal practices to specifically sort of create a smoother pipeline, which is offering me more space at the tail end of working with the materials specifically and being able to offer people directly somewhere to go so that there's not anyone being left without an answer. Speaking of without an answer, I didn't answer your question. Probably like 50% of people that I actually really get to work with on like really carving out next steps together, and I look forward to closing that gap.
I've always, hello.
Hi.
I appreciate your efforts and stuff. As a boat owner myself, one of the things I've always seen is that smaller fiberglass boats in particular, less than 30 feet. I've always thought about, I haven't had the chance to do it. I don't need the chance to do it. But you could invert one, provided you had a clean way of removing the bottom paint and containing and disposing of that correctly. You could invert one, put a skid over them, take the deck out and make a nice garden shed. So
I love that idea. I think that's exactly the kind of thinking that we can all have around this issue. And I've seen some really cool applications like that. I haven't seen that with fiberglass, but I have seen that with wood, and have had some really exciting ideas. I went to this Earthship Village in New Mexico last year, and I thought, looking at all those structures, wow, a boat flipped upside down out here where rot is less of a challenge. Pacific Northwest, we love rot in our boats. Oh man. But in the desert, I think exactly what you're saying could really have some potential to thrive. So you are spot on.
You mentioned like insurance and for boats, you know, because I got friends of mine that had wooden boats, and they said they couldn't get insurance.
Yeah.
On them. What sort of, you know, regulation that, you know, like say for Washington State, especially Washington State, you know, with their insurance commissioners and that, what sort of legislation would you envision anyway to help, you know, get that insurance for, you know, people with wooden boats, and to help, you know, maybe preserve some of this, or just be able to pull them out of the damn water?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. There's a couple questions I feel in there, or at least a couple answers I'm having to what you've said. So first of all, from a legislative perspective, I think legislation around, I love this question, by the way. I love thinking about legislative. I'm like, put me in DC. I really have fun there. So I think that maybe insurance companies should be required to insure people. Like the way that the government works with insurance, I don't think that Like if we're required to have insurance, then they should be required to provide insurance. That's my first thought on that. And for the particular project of what I'm designing, maybe this will change, maybe it'll expand. Right now, my vision and the work I'm doing on this insurance option is specifically for ports. So it's working with the ports. There's an infrastructure there where the majority of liability should fall onto the port itself. They're the ones taking the boat out of the water. They're the ones moving the boat around. They're the one putting the boat on blocks. We're doing the work. We're saying, please insure us while we do the work. If someone takes a chainsaw to their boat in the yard, that would be really bad, especially if it was wooden, because it would onion out. But I think that we would probably notice that before it happened. So I feel confident that the risk of that, where with all the time that I've spent in shipyards and all the different folks whose boats I've helped them work on, I think people's intentions are pretty solidly, if they're putting that time and effort in, that they want to fix their vessels. And so I think the risk there is really low in working with ports to ensure that people can get their boats out, can get this work done, even if that looks like ensuring them only to do work with certified contractors, whatever that looks like, just making sure that that isn't an impossibility for someone. There you go. Coming, Jerry.
I have a question about beeswax.
Oh,
Are you having problems obtaining huge amounts of it? Because I know the bees are in trouble. And how do the honey bee people think about you using this as wax and they can't sell their honey?
so I'm really excited. I love bees, and I just started keeping bees recently, and providing honey. So the wax actually shouldn't impact the honey process negatively. And what I'm actually hoping about this is that it creates a new economy to incentivize people to keep bees. If there's a whole other market where all of a sudden, my goal would be to legislate a requirement, if there's an option to have something that is not severely poisonous on the bottom of every boat, I would legislate for that to be required. And in that case, there would be a real need and demand for beeswax, which would help hopefully repopulate the bees by incentivizing with an economic stimulation, the opportunity of being a bee steward.
All of this sounds like it costs a tremendous amount of money. Where are you getting your financing?
Okay, so nowhere. I was on my own at 14, which is part of why I care as deeply as I do for the planet and people. And I also really know how to be scrappy and make something out of nothing, which is also part of this project. Really see myself in it. I'm not exactly sure how that goes. I don't really keep track of all these things. I'm just putting the next dot to the next dot. And maybe I would be better off if I was less good at scrapping because people would give me their money. I don't know. I might be doing myself a disservice being so practical. But that's the truth, is that it's self-funded, and I partner with people where I can, where it makes sense to be able to make the maneuverances that I need to. I'm grateful here today where I am being paid by the museum to talk to you all. So thank you for being here.
It's a great question. Great question. And it costs $50,000 to scrap a boat legally. That is to do it versus going out and shooting a hole through it and sinking it somewhere. So there's already monies that are being directed toward destroying boats. And there's a notable pain point that's getting more and more. Environmental costs are getting more and more expensive. So that kind of mountain tsunami of effort is like when you bring up this sort of a hopeful, it's like, can we change that course and therefore change that economy? So tall order, right? But I think the beauty of something like this and the beauty of Olive in the world is that there are a lot of people who are sinking in a sense of betrayal, deep, what is happening to the things we love, the things we care about. And so when you invite the possibility of a solution and people say, oh, thank God there's a potential solution, it starts to change that energy, and that energy changes and money tends to follow that. That's my belief and my experience. You just have to get out there and inspire imagination. And that then, and offer a different possibility. So I love your question. I love all of your questions. I think this has just been how fantastic you've all been. I actually love this museum, and I love this place that we stayed. It was epic, and it snowed. Anyway.
It
Yeah.
did snow. And I'm going to add to that, actually, E2, you really like stirred up this other conversation. And you, what is your name? Arlene, thank you. My head's singing the Jolene song now, but your name. So part of designing with a 501c3 and a for-profit was to be able to solve some of this problem where the bottom paint that we're developing, where these other things, and Walrus will continue to help develop solutions, and a percentage will stay with Walrus. And taxes will go back to Walrus, and we'll have the opportunity through some of these more, I don't know, sellable solutions to be supported, and for there to be investment, and to show people in these smaller ways too that this is worth investing in. And to E2's point, there is money already going from the government in this direction. And part of where I'm so excited about this shipyard is that once we have a facility, we'll be able to work directly. And at $50,000, if you start working with artists who are coming to harvest their material, it starts to look really different. So there's the opportunity both for myself to put food on the table through this effort, but also to minimize some other people's expenses, including the expense that it is to deconstruct a vessel.
So I used to live in Michigan, about 70 to 80 miles away from Chicago, and on Lake Michigan. And when Michigan started having Michigan Lake started having a problem with the fish coming in that were not native to Lake Michigan, one of the people said, "How can we solve this?" And there was a chef in the audience. He said, "Just figure out some way to cook it, and we'll eat it." And I think that's what they did, because that fish fish that was endangering the natural fish life is decreasing. So your idea of creating products out of junk and selling it to someone that different products with, they make flooring out of it, they make fiberglass out of it, just finding the person that wants to use this stuff and make a profit out of it. It's gonna have to have a profit for somebody. So keep going.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to do one more question with this gentleman in the back.
The beeswax paint sounds really interesting, and I'm curious. Are there any objections that you've run into so far to somebody having applied this or wanting to apply it? Number one, and number two, have you thought about applications outside of boats? Just because it seems like a great revenue stream potentially for you guys.
Thank you for your excitement about it. I'm really excited about it too. Boats and bees, two things I love. Okay, got so excited I forgot your question. So He said, are there objections? So everybody wants it, especially as we were just traveling abroad on this. I mean, everybody who's heard about it has said, when can we have it on our boat, which is really great news. We're formalizing application and testing to be sure that we can respond to any objections that someone shows up with. But everything has been outrageously positive, including the interest. And other applications, we are patenting it in a way that also goes towards like furniture, specifically with the intention for the flooring in your home. One of the folks we're working on this with brought up the point that most of our flooring, if we're lucky to have wood floors, is actually covered in a plastic coating. So we're walking around our home with our bare feet touching plastic, which we know is not really good for our bodies. So those are a few applications, and if you have some other ideas, I would love to hear them. Hang on.
Focused on the beeswax.
Okay, that's great.
You were talking about the floors. Are termites, is it termite proof is what I'm asking, if you have beeswax under your flooring?
It wouldn't be under, it would be over. So it would be on top of it. And while we haven't tested for termites, what we're finding, it's a pretty thick material that there's a real magic to it. And I hope to get the chance, I'm sorry I didn't put it in the slides, to show some of you what happened with the lake water in these small jars experiment. Nothing grew. The water was sparkling when there was beeswax present. And we know beeswax has a really strong bacterial and antimicrobial property to it. So I think my experience of that, I'm very intuitively led. I'm not a scientist. I love working with scientists. They can prove my intuitions. But I don't know how to speak to that issue specifically, other than that it's a good point of something to test for and think of, and that how we've watched everything that is alive interact with the beeswax thus far, including in a beehive. So actually, to your point, so beekeepers traditionally will dip their entire hive into wax to keep termites and other insects out. So everything that we see in nature would suggest that it's kind of this perfect protector from pests.
Well, we live in termite country here, and it would be great if it worked for foundations and the underlaying of the shingles, which is plywood. And I've had
under the roof. I get it now.
Well, that's what happened to my house. They got into the plywood underneath the shingles.
Yeah.
So I had to have re-shingled.
I think you just had a really important idea. Thank you for sharing it.
Before we give Olive one last round of applause, this is the last week of our Past to Present lecture series, but we do have some upcoming events in March that I wanted to make you aware of. One of them is a collaboration with Pilot House Distilling on Friday, March 20th. It is Salt and Spirit, a maritime tasting voyage, where our very own Katie Benny will be giving a presentation talking about how fishing vessels in our community have been taking these barrels of whiskey with Pilot House Distilling and basically aging that whiskey in this marine environment. Ooh. And there will be whiskey for you to try. So that is Friday, March 20th. And then the following Friday on March 27th, we're going to be hosting back in this space an after hours event with Jason Lynette, who's retired Navy and is actively working with WCT Marine as a bosun's mate. And he's going to be giving a special talk about maritime slang. We're calling it "Don't Let the Cat Out of the Bag." So both of those do require registration, but if you're a member, you should have it in your inbox somewhere for priority registration, and you'll also get a discount for both of those programs. Let's give Olive one last round of applause. Thank you so much.
Also, if you loved the pictures, the photographers' names are on the screen. Thank you, everybody.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.